evening, everyone. I'm Carolyn Eynon, and I'm so honored today to be in my home with an honored guest who I have been a friend of for 12 years, Captain from the Navy, Lonny K McClung. Lonny and I have sung together in the Carolyn Eynon Singers, and this year he is honoring my choir with a Veterans Day concert on Sunday afternoon, November 10th, at Christ the Lord Lutheran Church in Carefree. So in order to really understand what Veterans Day is celebrating, I couldn't think of anyone more important, more creditable than a gentleman who has dedicated his life to the Navy. So I have a little time with Lonny right now, and I'm just going to share some history with you about what his life has meant in the service, what music has meant to both of us in, out of the service, and in choirs and church choirs, a little bit about his family life, and of course, what is music in his life with regards to the armed services. So this is my friend Lonny, and I would like to know, Lonny, how and when you started to realize that you were going to be in the Navy.
Well, Carolyn, there was a moral act that was enacted that gave a lot of money to colleges, and in the days when I was in college, those schools that were receiving the compensation from the government required 2 years of ROTC training. And so I went to the University of Illinois. I came from a very small high school. There were only 13 boys in my high school class. When I got to Illinois, there were 2,500 in the Army ROTC, about 2,000 in the Air Force. The Navy only had 265, and I guess maybe I was petrified by the size of it, so I selected the Navy. And once I got into the program, I saw that the coolest instructors were the guys that wore gold rings on wings on their chest, and I said, you know, maybe I think that's what I want to do when I get out of here. So that's how I got into the Navy back in 1962. So
in Illinois,
at the University of Illinois. So I was commissioned and went to pilot training after that. Following pilot training, I was assigned to a squadron at NAS North Island in San Diego. Lived in a very fancy place. There were 13, it was a 13-room house that 5 of us bachelors rented just 2 blocks down from the Hotel del Coronado on the beach. We called the place The Pad, and we had our own matchbook with our, that we gave out at the Oak Club with our phone number on it, and it turned out to be Party Central on a lot of nights out there. So that was my first squadron, but that's the social side of it. The professional side was I was assigned to a squadron and made my first combat deployment to Vietnam in 1966. And one of my jobs was that of being a landing signal officer, who's the guy that stands on the deck with the microphone and talks the airplanes aboard, which was a very challenging thing. Airplanes would get shot up and we'd have to talk them back aboard in the night. So that was a lot of fun. And from there, I was assigned to a Black World program at Edwards Air Force Base with the U-2. We actually put the U-2 on an aircraft carrier back in those days. Following that, I made my change to the fighter community, went back to San Diego to Miramar and flew the F-4 for another 2 combat deployments. So I had 3 combat deployments in the early years. Following that, I got a master's degree at Monterey in weapons system acquisition and financial management. Back to back to Miramar as a squadron commanding officer. And then I was selected to be the commanding officer of Top Gun while I was there, and got to spend 2 years at Top Gun. Following that tour, we had the F-14 training squadron, which is a very large outfit at San Diego, and from there I went to be on admiral staff, and I guess my last, I was chief of staff on the Carrier Enterprise for that admiral, and then my last duty was I was the chief of staff for the fleet commander in the Atlantic, and I retired in Norfolk in 1992 with 30 years of service. So.
Tell me more about your 2 years at Top Gun.
Top Gun was a wonderful experience. It's the greatest flying job in the world. The kids that got selected to come as students were the best of the best in their squadron. and we took the best of our students, and after every class we picked about 2 or 3 of those best of the best to come back and be on our staff as instructors. Out of that group of youngsters that I had one that made 4 stars. I had 3 guys that were later 3-star admirals. Were just really outstanding young men and women that we had at that. And it was the most fun flying you can ever have, to go out and compete. And compete is one part of it, but the main thing we were doing was trying to simulate what a really good enemy pilot would be and use the techniques and train the other pilots to react to our maneuvers, because they had better airplanes. They just needed to learn how to optimally employ them. And so that was the challenge there, was we didn't want the ego trip to beat up on guys all the time, although occasionally it was a good idea if we had somebody that was a little egotistical. But our job was to make that guy the best guy we could make him before he went back to his squadron. So it was wonderful.
And how many years did you serve in Vietnam?
I did 3 combat deployments to Vietnam. The first one was in 1966 for 6 months. Then 1970 to 73, it was pretty intense. We had a 9.5-month deployment with a 5-month turnaround followed by a 10-month deployment. So it was, I didn't add all those months up, but I had about 250 missions over the beach there. So.
And you came home whole.
I came home in one piece, and one of the things that we're going to get into in a minute here is my family. But my wife was an incredible tower of strength during that time. When my son was 4 years old, I had been gone for half of his life, and she did a marvelous job of raising our kids. And those that waited home also serve, and so not only did she serve in keeping us going, but she was a leader amongst the wives clubs, and we had some combat losses. She was very instrumental in encouraging and helping out the spouses of those guys that didn't come home. So.
Well, she's a very strong lady.
She is very strong and very beautiful. So.
Well, I've met her, so you're not just bragging; it's truthful. Lonny, the next question goes right into this. I've known you as a wonderful husband, and I've seen pictures and heard great testimony about the successes of your sons and daughter. Can you tell me what family has always meant to you, and as a grandfather, how you are now feeling as a senior citizen, which I am too, and a grandma?
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear that.
Well, my kids, I've got a son and a daughter. They're both incredible young people. My son went to the United States Naval Academy. He was 4 years there. He was on the track team there. Was a wonderful athlete. In fact, he was an all-district football player in Texas and wanted to walk on for the football team. And then he realized that if he messed up his knees that he wouldn't be able to fly. So he switched over to the track team, and for the last 3 years he anchored the 4x400 relay team there. My daughter was number 2 in her class in a private school in San Diego. An incredible lady. Has got 3 beautiful kids. One of them's got a master's degree. The youngest was valedictorian of her class. We have stayed plugged in with them. We value our time with them. And I just celebrated a milestone birthday, and we were fortunate enough to gather all of them together on a cruise ship for a cruise to Alaska. And it was really, really fun. In fact, I like to talk about the fact that I beat 2 of my 3 grandsons in pool.
Oh my gosh.
And they shamed me into that water thing where you get up on a boogie board and try to surf on it. And so at my advanced age, I was out there going.
And you're still walking.
I'm still going.
I've seen that on Royal Caribbean, and I thought, oh my goodness, they'd have to be a crazy person.
I wiped out on the first one, but I got up on the second time.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting.
So
Congratulations,
it was wonderful time with them, and we've got our little 4-year-old Caroline, who we move heaven and earth to spend time with her whenever we can, and it's just fun to watch them all succeed. And and just support them in every way that we can. And we spend time with them every chance we get, so it's great.
Well, I'm so grateful to know that about you too. That's one of the things I remember 12 years ago when we first met, that it was very high, if not the highest thing in your life, other than religion. When you look at the future of our armed services, describe what you would like to see in a successful environment
Sure.
in this world.
It is critically important that we maintain our technological edge, which we spend a lot of money in our research and development budget every year. And I can tell you that we have the finest equipment of any Navy anywhere in the world. We operate aircraft carriers on a routine basis. The Chinese are trying to get into that right now, and it's going to be interesting to see what it costs them to develop the capability that they can count on. We can count on our carriers anywhere, anytime, anywhere in the world, and any kind of weather. And so our aircraft can carry bigger payloads, have better capabilities than most other airplanes in the world. And the most important thing is we spend a lot of money on training, and I would say that that's probably the edge that we have over anybody in the world, is we train our pilots, our deck crews, our ships better than probably anyone in the world. So I see the future is pretty bright ahead as long as we maintain that technological edge and we keep the emphasis on training and making sure that our guys are ready anytime, anywhere, and they are right now.
Well, that sounds extremely impressive from a pedestrian's understanding. In your retirement.
Yes, I've failed miserably every time.
I know you have. It was just so lucky that you could come over tonight because I know you're not home after tomorrow. So what, at this stage of your life, what is your role as a retired Navy captain?
Well, for one thing, to continue support of those folks on active duty, I am the president emeritus of our 10,000 member tailhook reunion, Trailhook Association. I've been involved with as the president and the president emeritus since 1995, and our job is to support carrier aviation anywhere and everywhere that we can. And so we try to tell the story of what naval aviation is all about and what our capabilities are, and then encourage any opportunity that we get with the congressional staffers or anyone in leadership positions to support the Navy. And we do, I think, a pretty decent job of it. We have a very active program where we take folks out to the aircraft carrier for a day or two, and everyone that comes back is tremendously impressed. I love my time in the Navy for a couple of reasons. One, I love to fly airplanes. Secondly, the camaraderie of the guys that you fly with. But thirdly, leading the young 18 and 19-year-old kids that work on the flight deck and work on our airplanes was probably my highest honor. And I spent an inordinate amount of time making sure that those kids were successful in what they did, and try to encourage them to advance, to advance in their pay grades, to advance in their careers, and try to get them into the best schools we could or whatever. And I had my most satisfying times in the Navy were leading those kids.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's just wonderful. Such an inspiration for your own family, let alone all the hundreds and thousands of young men and women you have touched their lives.
A lot of them, and I run into them at the tailhook reunion every year. Hey, Captain, you remember when we flew together back at Kingsville?
Isn't that great? I'm extra proud for you. In reference to music, because we both love it, and you're a chorister, you started singing in elementary school, you went to college, you were in the men's glee club, and you sang in many different, I'm sure, community groups as you traveled, and then... I
was in the Music Man at a community theater, church choirs. I love gospel quartets. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, you're going to love our music that we're doing in this concert, and Lonny is the Master of Ceremonies, so the music that we're doing, he will hear in a month when he's with me, but we're starting with 4 different songs that are all patriotic. Of course, the national anthem. Then we sing Lift Every Voice for Freedom, which was written by Moses Hogan with a narration that's very powerful. Then we have a great version of God Bless America with the choir and trumpet. And we go into then American Broadway music that talks about patriotism. And maybe you've heard of these songs. The first one's from a show called The Civil War, and it's called Tell My Father.
Oh.
It's very moving. It's all just men, no women. And it talks about going off to the Civil War and saying to your father how you love him and you hope you return, but there's no guarantee. So it's a little bit of a tearjerker. It's accompanied by violin and piano. And
Wow.
it's all men. And then we go into a beautiful, fun, upbeat World War II hit called Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy.
Oh, I remember
Yeah.
that. I remember that well.
Yeah. Well, I was not around right then, but my mom sang it a lot when I was young. And we have a tap dancer and a trumpeter, and the women sing that.
That was the Andrews sisters, right?
Yes, originally.
Absolutely.
You bet.
I remember
Oh,
it well
goodness.
from days, in the
Yes.
days before television when we had radio.
Right, you said that music was just what you heard. You couldn't see it on TV.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
in college, I probably had the lyrics to the top 20 country songs memorized because I listened all the time. So.
Yeah, I remember as a child listening to them a lot. Then there's a really powerful musical called Chess. And there's a song from Chess called Anthem, and it's about a young man singing about his love of country.
Oh.
And that's a soloist in our group named J.R. Momeyer, and he's going to do just a great job. And then of course we have what you might enjoy a lot is a barbershop quartet singing
Wow.
a beautiful rendition of America the Beautiful.
Can't wait.
And then the third section is the most sophisticated writing by Howard Hanson, and it's a 15-minute work with piano, very intimate, very dramatic, powerful text by Walt Whitman. It's called The Song of Democracy by Howard Hanson. And I love this work because it really talks about how the ship is coming over to America and what does America represent but democracy. And it's well written. Howard Hanson, as you know, is a Pulitzer Prize winner
Right.
from Manhattan School of Music. Undeceased, of course, now, but he's phenomenal. And he also is one of the most outstanding American choral composers. After that, we sing a very upbeat song called If I Can Sing, and the title is I Still Am Free. So it talks about freedom. So I love this song, and the choir does too. We finish with a real cute arrangement of George M. Cohan, and we have a tap dancer, and it's really fun. You know, you'll recognize all the Cohan songs. We end, the last 2 songs are Salute to the Armed Forces, of course, which you will be helping lead. And then we close with a powerful song called Forever Music. And it's what music represents to our soul and how can we live without it. It's a generic song that I just love closing with. I sang it in Kansas City last March at the ACDA. One other thing I want to share with the audience is this gentleman, Dr. Sheldon Winkler, is a retired dentist. However, we met at a lecture on World War II music. And in his book, he talks about both big bands, vocalists, and how music helped the morale of our soldiers during World War II. So he's doing a pre-concert chat at 3 o'clock before the 4 o'clock show.
Great.
So you'll meet him and he'll meet you.
Wonderful.
And so I'm very excited to share this with all the audience too. So in conclusion, it's just a great honor to have you presenting with me, and the choir is looking forward to meeting you, and Top Gun here. I just am so honored to reunite with Lonny because I haven't been able to catch up with him. He's around the world.
No, as I said, I failed miserably in retirement. I'm busier than I think I was when we were together, and that's what led me to unfortunately have to drop out of it because there are so many opportunities and so much need for instructor pilots right now. And so, in fact, I'm in the middle of one. I started one today. We're going to finish up his training session tomorrow morning. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir. It's an
You
honor.
bet. I'm looking forward to the concert. It's going to be a great time. So.
Thank you so much. Bring your friends, bring every veteran. They're free as our guests and their families. And again, the concert's 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon, November 10th, Christ the Lord Lutheran. It's on our website, which is cesingers.com. Thank you.